What is up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. This is the next review for the Rolling Stones discography, and I know it has been some months since that I had reviewed their previous album, but I have made a post on the community section on my channel suggesting which album should I review next, and some of you guys had mentioned Some Girls, and I thought since that was the highly picked one, I should come back to do a review on this album. So this is going to be on Some Girls, released in 1978, and it is the follow-up to the band's previous album, Black and Blue, which was the first Rolling Stones album to feature a new permanent member in the band, Ronnie Wood, after the departure of Mick Taylor to pursue his solo career. So Some Girls has been known by many fans as like a return to basics, as like a return to form, and I will have to agree with a lot of the fans right there. Although there were some tracks on Goat's Head Soup that I really liked, but in terms of the classic of the classics in the Rolling Stones discography, I think that Some Girls is, in my opinion, the last of the classics. It is 40 minutes in length. It has 10 tracks. So comparing the sound to Black and Blue, which was a very loosely placed, jammy, reggae, funk-styled album, Some Girls is, I'd say, a much more improved and stronger sounding album, and the roots elements are back to business, and there are some other styles that the Stones had done on some of the tracks on this album. Also, the Glimmer Twins, well, Jagger and Richards once again produced this album, and they did production on some of the band's previous albums as well. So I think Some Girls does contain some of the Stones' best tracks. The opening track, Miss You, for example, which is just a very simple structured sound, a very disco-inspired kind of sound. And I think it really suits perfectly, and Jagger's vocals on this track and like the other tracks on this album are really, really good. And Miss You is one of those like very simple but catchy tracks. Mel Collins did the saxophone work on this track, which is really, really good. You get to hear the cover of Just My Imagination, originally written from Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong. And as much as I do like the original, I think the Stones did this cover really nicely. It is on a gentle vibe. Once again, vocal harmonies from Jagger and Richards are really neatly placed together. Some tracks like Lies, which is the faster sounding song. It is the shortest song on the album, it's just 3 minutes in length. And as a closing track to finish the first half of the album, I think it really suits it perfectly. Lies is like a very quick rock and roll kind of attitude sound. The second half of the album opens up with a track called Faraway Eyes, and believe it or not, it is my personal favourite song on this album, and this is where it turns to a very countrified sound. And Ronnie Wood did some slide guitar on this one, and Jagger was on the piano, and he did some spoken word direction on his vocal performances, and I just absolutely love it. I think, despite it being one of the singles on the album, it's one of the more underappreciated singles from every other track the Stones had been making over the years, and I really do love Faraway Eyes. Respectable, like Lies, is another one of the quicker paced, in-your-face type of sound. Again, with a very catchy, memorable chorus. It just has a lot of beef to it. Before They Make You Run is the only track that Keith Richards does lead vocals on. And I gotta say, even though that I talked about Keith's vocal style before on some of the tracks on a few of their previous albums, I will have to admit that as a singer, Keith Richards is quite so underrated. Not many people would talk about his vocals that much when it comes to the Stones, but I think he has a voice of his own, and I think they just sound clear and natural sounding, and I really do like the sound of his voice. Beast of Burden, which is a slower paced track, innocent sounding vocals from Jagger. It is one of the tracks that has like a soul direction. In terms of my least favourite track on this album, I think it is Shattered. I mean, Shattered is a really good track to close off the album, but as a song by itself, I don't really cite it as one of the stronger sounding tracks, but needless to say, I guess it would finish this album on a pleasant note. Of course, it's not as strong of a closing track, you know, like Moonlight Mile, Soul Survivor, which is very underappreciated in my opinion, to You Can't Always Get What You Want, and Salt of the Earth, but I think Shattered is a really good track. There isn't really much to be said about Some Girls, since it has been known by many Stones fans as one of their best albums, and I would have to agree. So I think this album has a lot of punch, some really good production, some strong musicianship, really good vocals, and the tracks that just have their own feel and sound on their own. So I personally do love Some Girls as much as, you know, other albums that have been known as like the golden era of the Stones. I'm going to give Some Girls by the Rolling Stones 10 out of 10. Love this album. I think it's their last classic album. So let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.